What's up, bro?
Aye.
There's not a rule that you have to use the 3 subs.
He's the best left back.
To 1 are the odds they're giving us. A lot of them are in for a surprise. We've got a mighty team that no one else has seen. The stars of Canada are on the rise. But who can lay down odds on the hearts of 11 men? Oh Canada, our hearts are ringing true. We've won for you before and we'll win for you again. Oh Canada, we'll proudly play for you. Dale Mitchell has touches like no one else has got. In Mexico we'll show them how to play. And striker George Pecos has a rifle for a shot. And Tino Lantieri saves the day. Bobby Landerduzzi and Chris Wilson will be there. Their years of dedication have come through. Their courage and their pride with their teammates they have shared. Oh Canada, we'll share it now with you. But who can lay down odds on the hearts of 11 men? Oh Canada, our hearts are ringing true. We've won for you before and we'll win for you again. Oh Canada, we'll proudly play for you.
Well. Hello then. Hello everybody and welcome back to the third sub live show presented by Macy Sports. I'm your co-host Alexander Gangaruzik, joined by Samuel Rowan. I've got a bit of an unfamiliar setup for the first few minutes as we worked through some technical difficulties, but I'm pleased to join you guys today to preview this massive game really between Canada and Haiti. It snuck up on us. All of a sudden it's Saturday, it's 2. There's a game in less than an hour. I don't feel ready for this, but hopefully Canada is a little more prepared than just how quickly this has come up. But Sam, how are you doing today before we dive into all this?
Doing well. I mean, I guess first and foremost, it's something that probably needs to be addressed. I mean, tough scenes this morning at the Euros, and shout out to Christian Eriksen. Hope he's doing well. That's never something fun to see. Obviously, difficult situation getting the match back underway. Have to feel for the players, but in some sense, probably just good to, get the match done with and hopefully, best for Eriksen and his recovery. But in terms of Canada, I mean, massive match that's come up very quickly. It's not all decided today. So there's always that little anticlimactic element in terms of the dual-legged fixture, but going down to Haiti, obviously incredibly important to get some kind of result, to score an away goal, to establish yourself in the fixture. And I think Canada's poised to do that and poised to hopefully, scare away some of the demons of tournaments past, because it's kind of been a theme. They're trying to set a new narrative, trying to, bring a new fresh perspective and some new players into the fold. And so far so good, but the stiffest test so far today.
Yeah, and just to go off what you said at the beginning, just shout out to obviously Eriksen and Denmark and Finland and all the fans. Just such a sad scene, really. I mean, it really is a stark reminder for how great life can be at times. Bad things can, those sorts of things can happen. And credit to the medical people on site for the amazing and quick work that they did there, and even just the sort of work they do behind the scenes that we don't see on a public stage like that one. So just shout out to that. And as for this Canada-Haiti game, there's just, so much at stake. It's kind of nice, and in a sense, it's like a warm-up game. This is game 1 of 2. Obviously, you want to get out of this with a positive result, but it's nice that you kind of get to dip your toe into the water. It's not kind of like that, say, a Suriname game where it's win and you go home. It's a one game. If it goes wrong, you'll got to rue those mistakes. I mean, obviously, if you go wrong, you dig yourself a hole here, but at least you get that sense of, okay, you're dipping your toes in the water, so to speak. You get to start out, see what things are about. And I mean, I don't know if there's necessarily an advantage of being the home or away team in a two-legged series, because Canada say they have the advantage of getting an away goal, but if they don't get an away goal, Haiti gets the advantage in the second leg. So I don't think there's any advantages or disadvantages here. So for Canada, it's just time to show up, ball out, start strong, because the weather report I checked in Haiti, it's currently 33 degrees Celsius in Port-au-Prince, and that's with clouds. So like it's a humid 33. That's kind of 33
love that. Absolutely love that.
It's the kind of 33 that you wouldn't even want to mow the grass in, let alone play soccer. So and at around, I think it's 6 local time, it's supposed to start raining and thunderstorms. So that's right about the beginning of the second half. So if you're Canada, maybe it's in your best interest to start strong, get some goals, and make sure you don't let this game get into a slog, because if anyone saw the Haiti-Nicaragua game, when the rain started to come down, with the quality of the turf, it flooded quite quickly, and it won't be pretty, especially for how Canada wants to play, the technical ability they have. So a fast start is key in a game like this.
Yeah, and as Ben pulls up the Stade Silvio Couture graphic there, obviously it is a turf pitch, but does not drain very well. We saw that against Nicaragua. I mean, you can see there in the picture you can see the flooding, or the damp areas on the field, and it kind of looks like one of those more roll out carpet style turf setups than the really good draining ones. And so that's definitely a factor. It also plays right into Haiti's style. Like, and I don't know entirely whether this is, one probably perpetuates the other, where Haiti plays this very direct, physical, choppy at times style, partially because of the pitch and partially because the pitch works for them, because that's the way they play. And so Canada, in the past might have been described as a more, counterattacking, physically gifted team. Now they like to play in possession. They certainly have the players to do that through midfield. Struggled a little bit, I think, against Suriname in the midfield. It could have probably one of the easiest places for them to improve, but in this match, it might be tough, right? Like, I don't know how much confident and quiet buildup you're going to be doing on this pitch, in the heat, in the weather conditions. It's a lot to encounter. And Alex, we have you in a normal view. That's good to see. Hopefully everything goes according to plan. But do you think Canada's even going to try to, dictate through possession, or are they just going to kind of get stuck into a sloppy, choppy game and try to embrace it to the best of their abilities?
It's a good question, because it's something like turf. It actually kind of lends itself to technical play, obviously, assuming it's not
in most circumstances. This turf might be a bit different.
It might be a bit different, but I just think stylistically, looking at how Haiti's lineup is, they're very front line and defensive heavy. They don't necessarily have the sort of technical players in midfield that Canada has. I think that's absolutely an advantage. And I mean, the lineups are out now. From what it seems, it appears it's 2 changes from the last last lineup. Canada Soccer officially hasn't released it, but Christian Jack is tweeting out that Steven Vittoria is in for Daniel Henry. So I guess in the middle of that back 3, and it's Marc-Anthony Kaye for Samuel Piette. So just already looking at that.
So that's Osorio staying in the starting lineup.
Osorio, Kaye, and Eustachio. That is a very
that has my attention. That's interesting.
It's a very technical midfield. That is a very, Osorio as a number 10, Kaye kind of in a deeper role. Eustachio is a good passer of the ball. You think Richie Leray, Alphonso Davies as wingbacks, Kyle Larin and Jonathan David. Scott Kennedy at the back, Alistair Johnston. Even Steven Vittoria is more of a technical defender. If you're Canada, I think we're going to see a lot of short passes. We're going to see a lot of ball on the floor. When there's turf like this, it's hard to play those through balls because it can slide, especially if the rain starts to come in. For those first 5-10 minutes of the rain before a field floods, the ball is going to be slick. It's going to be sliding around. It lends itself to short passing, to playing through in the midfield, not necessarily a runner's type game like Haiti will try to play, where they're trying to go down the flanks and target some of the fullbacks on Canada in the 3-5-2. So it's interesting. I think that the field will play a role, but until the rain comes, it might actually even benefit Canada a bit. But obviously Haiti's used to that, so they're always going to have the slight edge on that.
Yeah, just diving into some of the comments here as we see Ben's put that KJ tweet up on the screen. First, Guillermo Corto, if I'm probably not saying that correctly, but I like the analysis. Box to box, boys in the middle, freewheelers on the wings. That does kind of feel like, as I just talked about the play styles to start there, it does feel like they've gone for ball possession, control, and then when Haiti shows some frailties, when they can be broken down, then you use that pace. Then you use the poaching ability of a Jonathan David. And I'm excited for that. To me, that's a strategy that goes to show that Canada's trying to bag multiple away goals here. And I like that aggressiveness from Herdman. I like that they haven't completely, broken away from strategy. And then in terms of another comment, Alexandre Trudeau in the comments saying, hopefully Victoria doesn't get burned by speed. I think because you're playing in that back three, you've got Kennedy, who certainly showed some pace. You got Johnson, who's pretty athletic as well. Those guys should do a pretty good job covering for whichever center back ends up in the middle. I mean, I don't think Daniil is the paciest guy on earth either. So I'm not too worried about that. I like Victoria's ability to he's going to be comfortable in these kinds of conditions. It won't be the first time he's played in this kind of environment. So I'm relatively positive about that back three, and yeah, interested that this is the way Canada's chosen to set up. I think that David Witherspoon also would have been a cool option in the midfield. Interesting not to see him included. I mean, I might have swapped Witherspoon and Osorio, but obviously Herdman has confidence that Osorio is feeling fit again and going to be able to kind of build up his play. Because Alex, as you pointed out throughout our big preview podcast, Osorio was really good defensively and did a lot of good things in that match against Suriname. It just maybe wasn't on the ball his best. So I'm definitely going to be watching his performance today, because that midfield battle is gonna rage on, especially if Canada ends up in the octo here. That's going to be a hotly contested position on the pitch.
Yeah, well, I think Osorio is going to be a key man, because one caveat I did have about him is that he is technical. So I think his issues last game were more rust. So theoretically, playing 70 minutes should have shaken off more than most of the rust he had. So I want to see how he looks today. If he looks better today, I'm happy with this change. But what I like you mentioned, is his defensive work rate. I didn't notice it when I was first watching the game, but upon the rewatch, he was everywhere. He was showing up on the left wing, the right wing, the striker. And it's good to have, I think, the key pressers are him and Jonathan David, because Kyle Larin, he doesn't press as hard. And when you don't have a guy like Lucas Cavallini on there, who's obviously an excellent presser of the ball, a guy like Jonathan Osorio's key, because he kind of provides a bit of cover for a guy like Kyle Larin, who you want on the field because he's dangerous in other areas. He gets in the box, he scores goals. You need that. But what he doesn't do defensively, Jonathan Osorio is kind of there to make up the load. And I think consequently, I like this idea of throwing Marc-Anthony Kaye in there as well. I think Samuel Piet, I liked what he brings to the table. I just think last game with him and Eustachio was a tad bit defensive, considering Canada had full control over that midfield. And I see a lot of similarities with this Haiti team to stylistically to what Suriname wanted to do. So I think, why not go for control in the midfield, dominate the midfield? And I think because if Canada dominated the midfield more offensively, I think that Suriname game could have been a 5-6-0. It could have been more controlling, more dominating. And I think against Haiti, obviously they've set up the 3-5-2 for the counter, and I think that's fine. I think Alistair Johnston and that Larea stack will be good, because Derek Etienne down the flanks, he's going to be a danger man. He's kind of going to be that outlet with no Duckins Nazan up top too. They were playing a 4-4-2 last week, Haiti, where now they're playing a 4-3-3. They're going to want to outlet. They're going to want to get down the flanks. So I think the 3-5-2 is going to be key for trying to nullify that. But I just look at that midfield. I look at Davies and Larea at wing back. I look at Larin and David. There's so much to like there offensively, but I think defensively it's going to be interesting. But I think Osorio as a pressing 4 or pressing number 10 there, as Ben puts it on the screen, as I just tweeted out there, and then having Johnson and Kennedy kind of as Davies and Larea cover is huge. I mean, personally, I thought Sam Adekugbe was going to slot in. I thought he was excellent off the bench. I was expecting him to kind of play the Johnston role, but if Johnston's fit, if Johnston's ready to go after the short turnaround, I'm more than happy with having him stick in. I think the only other change I possibly would have seen was I think it was David Witherspoon for Jonathan Osorio. But as we mentioned, Osorio brings a lot to the table defensively. So not really surprised there. I like this lineup. I think this could do some damage against Haiti.
Yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to bring up, kind of circling back to earlier in your commentary there, is what does this change, taking Samuel Piet out, do for Eustachio? Because I think, he's a player with pretty big stature coming into these matches, and maybe it was kind of a mixed bag performance against Suriname. Didn't really feel like Canada got the most out of him. Now that he's sort of the sole defensively responsible one in the midfield, he's definitely going to slot in between the center backs or sit in that deep lying role. Do you think that's somewhere where he's more comfortable, where maybe playing alongside Piet in the last match, it didn't work out quite as well?
That's interesting. I mean, I thought Eustachio looked good last game,
he's a player of great quality. It didn't feel like they maybe got the best out of his attributes.
Well, just like maybe I just wonder if that Piet-Eustachio partnership was a bit too defensive considering what Suriname offered through the midfield. I don't think they needed necessarily to double down and play a double pivot. It's not a team like Mexico or the US or even Costa Rica where like a technical opponent, heck, even if you look around at other opponents that they could have played, say theoretically, if they're playing a Curacao or, one of those teams with more technical skill through the midfield, I would have liked to see a double pivot. But I think we saw that having Piet and Eustachio was more than enough cover. I think Eustachio on his own should be enough. You may as well get some technical skills elsewhere on the field so you can progress the ball and get up the pitch. So I think Eustachio he might shine in this role. I think it's similar to the one he kind of plays for Pacos. They played more of a traditional like 4-3-3, and he was the number 6. So I think this could be a good way for him to unleash him even more, because I thought he was unleashed in the last game, but this could free him up even further.
Yeah, and as we see another comment from Alexandre there, that sounds like a Thomas Neff take that wants to see Buchanan on the right-hand side, and obviously, encouraging throughout the under-23s, encouraging in the time he got against Aruba. What do you think of that, Alex? I mean, I think I'm probably still in the Larea camp for now, but obviously I'd like to see Buchanan have a roll off the bench, and he's certainly, if you can bring someone like that on in the 65th, 70th minute, if this match is 0-0 and there haven't been a lot of chances and you need someone with fresh legs to maybe break the match open in a wide area, Buchanan's a good guy to call on.
I like Tajon Buchanan. I like his offensive attributes. I think 3-5-2 against the right opponents, I'm here for it. I just think Haiti, they offer a bit too much in the counter in terms of, again, Etienne on that left side. Having that Larea Johnston stack is going to be huge to keeping Etienne quiet, because especially with no Nazone up front, Franzi Piero, the Gangon striker, he's going to be on his own today, which is going to be interesting to see how he reacted, because I thought when I watched Haiti versus Nicaragua, him and Duquesne's Nazon had a good partnership. They were playing the balls long. They could kind of flick it and run. So that they had multiple outlets. And as seen here, those are two of my players to watch. Obviously, Nazone's injured. He doesn't start. That puts even more emphasis on Derek Etienne, because it's hard to play a lone striker like Pierrot and consistently play through him. They're going to try to go through Derek Etienne down the flank. So I'm fine with having Larea on the field instead of Buchanan. Just he offers a bit more defensive solidity. You obviously got Davies on the other side, Alistair Johnson behind him. I think that's the right call, but I understand in the right circumstances, a guy like a Buchanan, heck, a Zachary Broguiar even could also be another shout for that position. But I think Larea is the good choice for today.
Yeah, and that Nazon injury is a bit of a blow for Haiti. I mean, that definitely, getting to have that partnership up front plays into their style. And just going back and watching some of their matches and comparing it with what we saw against Suriname, it's, in some ways similar, because it's the same kind of, they do thrive off some chaos, but whereas Suriname still like to get bodies into the box and kind of finish, right in around the area. It feels like Haiti can just go out and run on the counter attack, right? It's full speed ahead, and Suriname had some of that in their game, but I don't think they had the same threats, up front, maybe a little bit not as pacey. And so there's different things to watch out for in this one, but that's obviously a big loss for Haiti and not ideal in terms of the starting lineup.
Yeah, no, I think Nazon's a big loss. He scored, I think he's already the second co-leading goal scorer in Haitian history, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's something like 23 goals he scored in 42 games, which is quite the rate for him. He's a very technical number 9, but he's big, and just that combo of him and Pierrot, who Pierrot's played at the Ligue 2 level. I think he's even had some stints even higher up. There was a good mix of, the size, obviously the physicality, but they were good at interplaying, playing a little technical. They're good finishers. And again, I just think with no Nazan, Pierrot loses a bit of that. It's going to be hard for him to play as a lone striker. I think with Canada's back three, that plays into their hands, knowing that they only have to watch one guy. It's pretty much, really, it's going to be Vittoria versus Pierrot. And I think that's a good matchup for Canada. I think if it was Pierrot and Nazan up against Vittoria, along with two inexperienced guys in Kennedy and Johnston, you're a bit worried about that. But the fact that it's only going to be a lone striker, that again, that plays in Canada's hands and plays, it kind of tips their hand in the fact that a guy like Derek Etienne is going to be very busy. And just lastly, to round off this players to watch list, Johnny Placide in goal. He's an interesting one because he's a very technical goalkeeper. He plays in the Bulgarian league where, Milan Borjan used to famously play. He's a good shot stopper. Rebound control seems to be a bit of an issue from what I've seen. He did let out some interesting rebounds, but he's good at getting his body in front of shots. And what's the big thing for him is that he's really good at on his feet. Because I say last game, Canada were pressing Surinam's goalkeeper, Warner Hahn, and he was making giveaways. Well, Placide in the last game, Nicaragua were on him. There were a few where I thought he was going to give it up. Quick turn, a little up the field. He's fantastic on his feet. So I think Placide's an interesting one. Does Canada press as high knowing that he could easily play through them and give Haiti a quick numerical superiority? I don't know. Maybe it might be wise just to cut off his passing options and see what he tries to do, because he was good at his feet. And I just felt like it's important to highlight that.
Well, and it's important not just for breaking the press, but also starting the counter, right? And I know you noted in your pre-match analysis in written form that, you can also ping out balls and really be that kickstart or that quarterback of the counter attack. And so Canada is going to have to, play a delicate balance of obviously wanting to get the ball back as quickly as possible and, putting Haiti under pressure, but also not leaving themselves exposed, especially because you're in a three at the back where you could have, that midfield five and the two forwards all pressed up and leave those three at the back with lots of space to defend. And against someone like Etienne, that's not a situation you want to be finding yourself in too often if you don't have to.
That's it. It is just with a guy like Placide, that's a big worry as well, just what he can do in terms of his big kicks. Because again, with Haiti, some of the size, a guy like Pierrot, for example, if he can continue to find some pay dirt in terms of Placide straight to Pierrot, and he flicks it on for an Etienne in speed, Canada's line gets pushed up the field. You can already start to see the consequences swirl there. So yeah, a guy like Placide is going to be huge for Canada. I think when he gets the ball, it might be wise to, even if you're the center backs, you see him on the ball, it's not often something you want to do. You want to be aggressive. You want to play a high line, maybe take 2-3 steps back, knowing that he can kick it long. And then if there's a flick on in the midfield with speed on the wings, you don't want to get burned like that. And Canada did a good job in the last game of not getting burned like that. But that's just, you don't want to play with fire like that against a team like Haiti. And I think they learned their lesson. You think back to 2019 when they played against Haiti, there were some of the goals they let in were instances of that high lines. I think of the Borjan and Godinho mistakes. Obviously, the mistakes themselves were quite catastrophic, but they started with Haiti getting behind on the high line, putting pressure. So Canada does have to be wary of that.
And then on the flip side of things, I mean, obviously Canada has, transitional weapons of their own and one specific transitional weapon in Alphonso Davies that's going to be a nightmare for Haiti to try to stop. As we see the Davies graphic on the screen there, obviously the resume almost, it speaks for itself at this point. And we all saw the way he was able to, after a shaky start, completely change the structure of that match against Suriname and, really get Canada comfortable. So kind of kicking it to you, Alex, defensively, Haiti's certainly got some physically strong guys, some guys, with some height, some guys to maybe cut down crosses and balls into the box. But how are they going to fare against someone like Davies running at them and Richie Larea as well, because he can be a threat on that opposite side. And even though a lot of the play is going to go through the left, you do have that option on the right as well.
Davies is going to be, he's obviously the key man, and I'm curious to see how he decides to interpret, the space in Haiti's defense. Because for me, I think with their size. High crosses shouldn't be happening. I mean, even again, no, Lucas Cavallini isn't on the pitch. There's no reason to cross the ball anywhere higher than anyone's hips today until he's on the park, especially with some of the size. Jonathan David and Kyle Larin are not exactly the biggest headers of the ball, and I think that's fine. I think Alphonso Davies, that's actually his specialty, is those low curled crosses. I think against Bermuda, where he's just put him on the plates for guys. Lucas Cavallini had a few that he maybe wanted back in that game against Bermuda. I think that's good. If Alphonso Davies can get into that space and deliver those low crosses, what say Haiti's defender have in size and height? Well, it might be a little uncomfortable if the ball's zooming at their feet and they're trying to clear, a bit lanky. It's not always easy, especially when you got guys like Jonathan David and Kyle Larin in the box. Just the runs that those guys make can be so quick. So one step here and then you're just in the pocket, low ball in. That's not going to be easy for Haiti to defend. So I think if you're Canada, recognize that. Don't play to Haiti's strengths. Don't try to play all these long balls in the air when you have two strikers. You don't really like to play that way. No need to cross wide balls that are very high. You don't need to cross deep. Hold possession. You have the advantage in midfield. You have the superiority. You're playing a 3-5-2 for a reason. It's a very technical formation. And then, just whip low crosses. So I think if you're Alphonso Davies, I'm curious to see how high that line from Haiti is going to be, because if they're going to defend a bit lower, it's going to be harder for him to maybe get into some of those positions he likes. But even then, as we started to see last game, I liked how comfortable he was at cutting inside, playing with the ball inside. I haven't seen much from that from him. I think it's specifically the first Jonathan David goal where he cut in and he played a number 10 ball to Jonathan David. I haven't seen that sort of quality from Alphonso Davies. So I want him to continue to do that if Haiti's going to play deep. Cut inside, make them fear you, make them know that you're there, because if there's one thing that Canada has a clear advantage over in Haiti in this game, it's Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David. So I want to see Alphonso Davies continue to play like a star man, like he's shown that he can play in the last few games for Canada.
Yeah, and those two certainly shown in that last match, and they spoke after, about the connection they kind of felt between the two of them and how they enjoy playing with each other. But a guy I'm curious to watch, and I guess I was maybe it's unkind to say I was expecting more out of him, but I was hoping for more in the Suriname match, was Kyle Larin. It just didn't feel like he really got that involved. And as you mentioned, David's the guy that does a lot of pressing. Larin kind of lurks more and makes those runs at times. And I do think that, if Davies and Larea are playing low crosses in, if he can kind of slip off the shoulder, make good runs and find a way to, get on the end of some service, he certainly has a role to play. And I think it's, for Canada to be truly dangerous and to really, compete against the top teams in CONCACAF, they need everyone involved, and they need, Kyle Larin being a fixture as well. And so I'm hoping he can kind of get stuck in. Alex, what did you think about Larin in the past match, and kind of what are ways maybe that Canada can, find some more opportunities for him?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Larin, because I feel like it's one that's a few. We talked about it on our 100th episode as well. I think it must have been Thomas who mentioned, Larin was a bit quiet. Well, I'm going to disagree. I mean, personally, I'm always going to back the strikers. Again, if they're doing a lot of the dirty work, I know the conversation's always going to be, if they don't score, what's the point? Well, I was impressed with Larin's maturity in terms of, he made some, upon what I remembered, he made some really good deep runs. He cut back, he played possession, he held possession, he was just moving around, he was being unselfish. And I like those sorts of things, because when you're in a front two, if Jonathan David's scoring a hat trick and you're Kyle Larin, well, we can make the argument that Kyle Larin facilitated that space for Jonathan David. So I think even though it was a quiet game for Kyle Larin, let's not discount that. I thought he did a lot of the little things that I like to see from strikers. That a guy like Kyle Larin, say, 3-4 years ago, he didn't do a lot of those little things. He used to be, for Orlando, for example, he was always proficient at scoring goals, getting in the box, heading home, but he didn't always do the little things. And I think that's what Kyle Larin now is. He's so impressive. It's impressive how much he's grown in that area, just playing with the ball at his feet, holding up the ball, interplay, making unselfish runs, knowing that he might not get the ball. So I think that could pay off in a game like today. The thing is, with strikers, you never know what sort of service he's going to get. And to be honest, I don't remember him getting one or even more than maybe one good look at goal, and Jonathan David got all the good looks. So who knows? Maybe today Haiti hones in on Jonathan David and the space opens up for Lair and he scores one or two. So I wouldn't be worried about him. I think that Lair and David partnership, what makes it so special is that it's going to be all about unselfish runs, a lot of off the ball work, pressing, little things like that. And I think that could pay off in a game like this for Lair and for all the unselfish work he did in the last game.
Yeah, I guess it's just one of those things where the match to match, the pendulum can swing back and forth, right? Like all of a sudden in this match, very well, Laren could be the one getting on the end of all the chances, but you have to continue to make those runs, do that work to be in the right area. And you're totally right. That's something that Laren would have struggled with 3 or 4 years ago. And that's, just goes to speak to his progression as a player. And now we've seen that when he does get on the end of chances and good service, he's a consummate finisher. So certainly be looking out for that in this one. Let's take a little quick look at the Haiti lineup. We have spoken about a lot of the players, but we haven't kind of taken a look at the lineup in full there. And Alex, I mean, any thoughts? Really, the midfield is kind of the one area we haven't talked about, and maybe that's revealing in a sense because that's definitely probably an area where Canada has the biggest leg up in this one.
Yeah, it's tough again with Haiti. I mean, I guess supposedly it says 4-4-2 on this screen, which is interesting. They have Antoine and Piero up front, and it looks like Etienne. And that is, I want to say, Simonson on the flanks. It's interesting. Journalists in Haiti who tweeted out this lineup before actually has a 4-3-3 with Antoine, Piero, and Etienne as the front three. So I guess first thing, I'm curious what a 4-4-2 or 4-3-3. Because you're Canada, you want it to be a 4-4-2. If you're going to have a 3-man midfield of Jonathan Osorio, Marc-Anthony Kane, Steven Eustáquio against a 2-man Haiti midfield, you're loving that matchup. If you're Canada, you're reveling in that. Obviously, 2 strikers, that would gives a little more headache for a guy like Steven Vittoria. But I think you take the trade off of having that sort of numerical superiority and just technical superiority as well in midfield. So I think if it is indeed a 4-4-2, I do target that as a potential advantage for Canada. If not, it's really tough because, I mean, looking otherwise, I think James Greffard at center back is very interesting. He didn't start last game. He's the Halifax Wanderers defender. That could be a very interesting matchup for Jonathan David or Kyle Larin, who are in the form of their lives at the club level. Well, Greffard, having played in the CPL, he hasn't played all that much in the last year or so because they've only played 7 games in the CPL. I'm curious how Russ plays a role in that for Greffard, knowing that he could potentially be either unfit or rusty. Obviously, maybe not unfit. They've been training a lot for Haiti. He has been called up a few times, but that's very, very interesting that we're going to see a matchup between a Canadian Premier League defender and 2 world-class strikers really who are in the form of their lives. I do also think that is a potential, route for profit for Canada. But otherwise, I mean, I am curious about Antoine. This is only his 2nd cap for Haiti. He has 2 goals in his 1 cap. He plays for Orléans. I want to say they're in National because they used to play in Ligue 2, so they're in the 3rd tier. But 2 goals in 1 game for a striker playing in France. He could be an interesting player to watch. But otherwise, it's interesting to look at some of these names. Like a guy like Simonson, he's listed as a defender on the squad list. He plays in Denmark. He somehow has 1 goal in his 1 cap as well, which is interesting. But I wonder, him playing as a winger, could that be a potential avenue? But if not, for this Haiti team, their strength of how they play is always more down to their tactics, their team play. So I'm not particularly too concerned about individuals other than maybe Piero and Etienne, who could do some damage on the counter.
Yeah, and I mean, as much as we love the Canadian Premier League, that's not an ideal situation when you're so long out of match fitness and as much training as you can do. There's definitely a difference, and so that's something Canada can certainly look to exploit. But as you pointed out, Haiti has always been a team that's really thrived on their system and their togetherness as a squad. So you can't undervalue any one player, to the extent that you sort of discount what they're capable of, because Canadian fans certainly know what Haiti is capable of in a 2-legged affair. But speaking of that, let's kind of take a look at the Haiti Football Association, their profile. We're taking a little break from the fun facts this week, given some of the stuff that's been going on there currently. We'll be respectful in that sense, but as we see, one Gold Cup all the way back in 1973 and one World Cup appearance in 1974. Alex, we spoke about golden generations with Thomas and Peter in our last podcast. Maybe that seems like that was the golden generation for Haiti.
Yeah, maybe, but if not, this generation certainly is peaking somewhere. And I mean, it's tough for them that they have to play Canada in this game. I just look now. El Salvador, for example, I'm going to continue to rip on El Salvador. They're up 2-0 against St. Kitts and Nevis. The fact that El Salvador are going to, stumble into the octo is just baffling to me when there's teams like Suriname who just got eliminated, obviously, by Canada. The fact that one of Canada or Haiti are going home.
Who did El Salvador lose to or drop points against?
They drew to Montserrat, for a reminder,
right,
everyone.
Right.
They have a population of 5,000 people, and that's just mind-boggling to me. So, anyways, enough El Salvador slander. I'm sure we'll get there when if Canada does play them in a Gold Cup, or knock on wood if they do make it to the octo, and assuming El Salvador doesn't throw away this 2-0 lead to St. Kitts and Nevis through 20 minutes. But in terms of golden generations, obviously this is all about Haiti. Yeah, that 1970s team is interesting. I was even doing some research the other day, just going back and looking at old World Cup qualifying cycles. Haiti used to be a force of the region, along with Mexico. It was really like Mexico and Haiti. Honduras kind of came around later. The U.S., obviously, Canada a lot later as well. The 80s for Canada, and the 90s for the U.S. Haiti used to be a real force in the CONCACAF region in the 70s, but they got screwed over by the fact that there was really only one and a half teams that would make it out of CONCACAF at that time. So it would usually always be a team like Mexico. But in 1974, they obviously they made it. They won. I guess it wouldn't be fair to call it the Gold Cup, since the Gold Cup's a newer tournament, but a CONCACAF championship, because, as in terms of the Gold Cup, only 3 teams have won that. It's Mexico, US, and of course Canada. Shout out to 2000 Canada team for that. But credit to Haiti for winning the formerly, the predecessor. It's kind of like the European Cup and the Champions League. Well, the CONCACAF Championship and the Gold Cup, they won the predecessor. So credit to that. But my only other fun fact is that Dukins Nazan is very close to breaking the all-time goal scoring record, and I think by the Gold Cup, I think that's something he might be. Maybe he'll be in contention for. But if not, lots of fun facts about this Haiti team. They're such a fascinating nation. I think for some of the hardship they've gone through politically, just that earthquake 10 years ago. For me, to see them at this level of soccer a decade after such a heartbreaking event like that is fantastic. Credit to them, and it's always hard to not root for a team like Haiti, seeing what they've gone through.
And just on a very basic level, like you look at the FIFA World Ranking, we're well inside 100 now at 83. So the competition's getting serious, and although Canada probably still feels confident in this match, it's just building up the level of competition, match by match. And so we kind of see the outline of how things have gone so far. Obviously, everyone's probably familiar with what Canada's gone through so far, but you see the 2-0 win over Belize, 10-0 over Turks and Caicos, and then the cagey 1-0 affair, Alex, that I know you were watching closely against Nicaragua. I mean, you've dropped some hints in terms of what you've seen from that match throughout, but anything you kind of want to add in terms of, thoughts there and things that people can maybe be anticipating if you haven't seen Haiti yet so far in this tournament, what's going to stand out to you?
Haiti just always finish strong. I don't know what it is. They always finish games strong. So I think a strong start's huge. Nicaragua started strong, but they didn't finish, and Haiti punished them in the second half for that. So I think that's one thing that stood out. What was surprised me is how direct Haiti are. They really don't play through the midfield. It was a lot down the flanks, a lot into the strikers, the 2 strikers. So maybe they're trying to go with a bit of familiarity there, even though there's a bit of players out of position. So they are very direct. They play to their strengths. They know that they don't necessarily have the most technical skill in some areas, but they know they got good speed. They know that they have, the awareness they know how to score goals. They're very in terms of attacking IQ, their forwards are very, very knowledgeable. Their defenders have high defensive IQ. It's just, maybe in the midfield, there's a bit of they lack a bit of skill, but they know their strengths. So that's what I think of Haiti. I think they're a tough outfit. You have to play a team game to beat them. And I think it's going to be a good test of Canada's ability to play as a team. I think against Suriname, they showed flashes of it, but what ultimately won the game was individuals stepping up in big moments. And I think that can still play a big role, but I think we're going to learn a lot about Canada's team game in a match like this against Haiti, because in that famous loss against Haiti, what they lacked was their team game. They kind of turned on each other. They fell apart. And against Haiti, you can't do that. Haiti's such a together group. They're such a tight-knit group, and that can really play into their strengths, and especially tactically with how disciplined they are in terms of knowing their roles, sticking to them, and playing to their strengths.
So you pointed out how well Haiti finishes off matches, but let's talk just a little bit about Canada's start against Suriname, because I feel like it feels like a long time ago now, and it was easy to sort of forget based on the way the rest of the match went. But it was a tense 15, 20, even 30 minutes, really, where Canada didn't look extremely comfortable. Do you think that now they're playing in a very similar system? You have a couple changes, but it's not as dramatic. Are you worried about Canada having a slow start again, or do you think that some of those nerves, some of those tactical intricacies, kind of the uncomfortable element will be easily overcome? Because if this is going to be a tense match, or if Haiti's going to score a goal early on, it kind of feels like that could be what breaks this thing open. But it also feels like Canada's more poised to start strong in this one.
I don't know, because if anything, the guys who had slow starts, Alistair Johnson didn't have a slow start. He was making his third cap, first at center back. Scott Kennedy didn't look nervous. He was making his first cap at center back. It was some of the veterans in midfield. A guy like Samuel Piet looked a bit shaky on the ball at times. A guy like Jonathan Azorio, who's a very highly capped player. He's played a lot of big games. He looked surprisingly nervous. Even a guy like Richie Laray looked a bit nervous. You can't factor that in. You never know how someone's going to start. Heck, I don't even think the players know. It's just, some days you show up to the field, you put on your shoes and it's just, or your boots, sorry, and you don't know what the start's going to be like. So I think, if anything, it's going to be up to Canada's leaders to making sure that if the players are feeling a bit of legs, to let the game calm down, let it come to them, because if anything, I'm not worried about Johnson and Kennedy. They really calmed me down, but for all we know, they'll finally, the pressure will start to catch up to them. So my guess is as good as yours in terms of the pressure, but I think a strong start from, say, an Alphonso Davies for your teammates. If you see your star step up and really grab the game by the scruff of the neck, that goes a huge way towards giving you a bit of confidence, inspiring you to keep your head in the game.
And it was a bit of a shift in terms of all of a sudden that match against Suriname felt completely different than any of the other ones they played. And it was in a slightly different system. And so I guess to answer my own question, I'm not anticipating that same shakiness or those same nerves, because I think some of the things they had to encounter, they've already overcome or gotten used to in that first match. So the schedule worked out well for Canada. They built up throughout this tournament so far. And so, I'm expecting a strong showing from Canada today. But do you want to do a little bit of kit talk here? We like to do it about the opposition. So why don't we bring up some kit talk? And you can see here Canada's kits in the last win against Haiti, which yikes, that feels like far too long ago, but June 2007. And there's shout out to Dwayne Di Rosario there. And I'm a bigger fan of the Umbro era than the Adidas era, I have to say. That wasn't a good time for kits in general. It wasn't really a good time for fashion, to be honest. So I think we'll give Canada the pass there, but there's some fun facts for you.
I like the Adidas era, man. You see that exact kit? I have a red jacket similar from that era with like that 06 or so era. Yeah. This stuff's nice. I mean, yes, it's very boring and templatey, but just looking back, there's something about it that's just
it's giving me like 2000. What was that 2006 World Cup vibes?
Yep.
All the kits were kind of the same with that Adidas style with the three stripes.
I mean, I guess Adidas is known for the three stripes. So I think that's a bit the misguided complaint is more Adidas. Stop being so iconic in that regard. But yeah, no, I like the white kit again. It is a bit templated, and that's always unfortunate. But I think it was a nice kit. Always a good one. And this Haiti though. Hey, if we're gonna move on to Haiti's kits, they've got the drip, and I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think they're going to play in red today because Canada's playing in white.
Oh, interesting.
Or maybe even in blue they might play.
I like the blue for Haiti. I'm a big fan of that.
They're both so nice. Just the fact that it's not a mainstream kit, maker. I'm not quite sure who the brand is, but it's one of the the hipster brands that some CONCACAF teams use. I'm here for that. And if I'm Canada, obviously they're going to stick with Nike for now, but imagine had they stuck with, I'm trying to think of like a local Canadian brand that could have been an option. Maybe I can't really think on the spot in terms of that, but heck, even like someone's mentioned me, a Macron, for example. It's not local, but they obviously do the CPL kits. Imagine a Canada Macron kit based on some of what we've seen with the CPL. That would be so cool, but if not, yeah, no, the Haiti's showing them, and Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname, all these teams are showing why you should rock with your hipster kit manufacturers. Imagine the fact that these sorts of kits are going to be played at a major tournament in major qualifiers is awesome, and I'm here for it.
I guess the only thing, if I was handing out advice, I would say that maybe you could lean in a little bit more to the gold accents, because I like that. I like that vibe they have going, certainly in the crest with the gold, and I feel like they could definitely use that to their advantage. And yeah, it's going to be, if Canada's indeed not in red today, that's interesting, because it's not a look we see all the time, and they've been in, I think they've been in red in every match so far during this qualification cycle.
With white, the white they need to break some demons today in white, because for me, white has most of the bad memories in the last year or two. I think they played Haiti in white, so I guess that's one way to break the curse. I think I'm trying to think the other game. U23s, they played Mexico in white.
True.
They also played Haiti in white, and that game we all know how they didn't lose, obviously, but they should have won. They also played in white. So yeah, Canada for me in red. All of their iconic wins are actually, they played the U.S. away. The 4-1 loss was also in white. They haven't done that well away from home in white. So this is a chance to break that trend and break that cycle. But yeah, as producer Ben has decided to remind us that famed Haiti game. Should we play a game, Sam? How many players are still in the lineup from that Canada Haiti game that are there today? Upon first look, there's Azorio, David. Wow, just 4. David, Davies, Azorio, and Borian. And the rest, Cornelius not in the squad, Hoyland on the bench, Hutchinson not in the squad, Arfield not in the squad, Henry on the bench, Godinho definitely not in the squad, Lucas Cavallini on the bench. That's wild to think 2 years ago, only that 7 new players would be in a lineup for a rematch. It really shows you how times change in international football, doesn't it?
Well, it's interesting because in one sense you can look at that lineup and, Hutchinson and Arfield aren't exactly slouches in the midfield. And really, I think Cornelius on his best day is totally comparable to Henry and Victoria. And, Godinho, you can make what you will of that match specifically. And obviously things didn't go very well, but like overall, you look at that squad and it's not a bad squad, but it's just Canada has filled in some of the holes, and Canada's also gained such incredible depth since that match. So in some senses, you can look at that lineup and say, oh, well, things aren't really that different, but in a lot of important ways, they've just changed the way that squad feels. And I think gotten more out of the players they have as well. So it's an interesting one to reflect on. I'm certainly feeling, I think, more confident now than I was watching those matches back in the 2019 Gold Cup.
That's for sure. I think just tactically, Canada's taken a big step. Just looking at some of the tactics, like what the heck did Canada expect to happen against a team like Haiti tactically? Okay, first of all, you got Alphonso Davies at left back. He hadn't even played a minute at left back for Bayern so far. That was after his first 5 months there. He'd only been eased in as a winger. he'd played probably 1 or 2 games at left back in his career under Carl Robinson. Throwback to those days. So I don't know what the plan was there against Haiti's speed. Derek Cornelius and Daniil Henry, I mean, that's a fine center back pairing. Not too much wrong there. But then pairing that with an inexperienced left back at the time, an inexperienced right back in Marcus Godinho, was playing, I think, at Hearts in Scotland at the time. I don't know what the plan was there. To be fair, Richie Larea wasn't even in the Gold Cup squad at the time. He wasn't on Canada's radar, which shows how wild his rise to the top has been. So I guess Zachary Bogiar or Marcus Godinho, either way, those are very attacking young right backs, and maybe it shows how they could have used an Alistair Johnston at the time, a version of him. And then just looking like Jonathan David as a right midfielder seems a bit, weird for him. Scott Arfield is in more of a, such a defensive role alongside Atiba Hutchinson. It's just weird. There's a lot of weird choices, but then again, we have to remember Kyle Larin wasn't really in favor at the time, so he didn't start. Jonathan Azorio, obviously, at the number 10. How I would have, liked to have seen, say, Arfield in that role and Mike Anthony Kay underneath them. We have to remember Steven Eustachio was injured at the time. Just like a mix of the tactics and who was available and who the preferred guys were. Things have really changed in 2 years. That's all. That's my big takeaway from this.
All right. Well, we're nearing the business end of the show here as producer Ben flashes up some Canadian players to watch. I mean, we've spoken about Alphonso Davies. We got into Eustachio, and then, hey, Milan Borjan, got to talk about it a little bit. Can he stay mistake free throughout these 2 legs? Is that a concern for you, or is that something that you just don't bother worrying about until it happens? And I've only just noted the Alphonso Davies at basically any position. I do appreciate that. And let's when we can bring producer Ben in here, because of like his take on this 2-legged fixture, because we haven't actually heard from Ben yet. And I don't know what he's thinking about this one. You went bold with your Suriname prediction, so I'm prepared for anything at this point.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing me into the show, guys. It's been a good show so far. I said it was going to be 2-2 in the Suriname match, and it certainly wasn't. I got 4 goals in total, right? But not exactly the dispersion of the goals. But that's the same scoreline I'm going to go with this time. I think it's going to be 2-2 between these 2 sides. I think Canada with 3 at the back, well, they did well against Suriname. Haiti's a much better team altogether. And I think that the 3 at the back is going to cost Canada when Haiti get on the attack. And I think Haiti's going to get an early goal and make it a little frightening for Canada in the early stages. And then, of course, Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David are going to come out and do their work in the second half. But I think the first half is not going to be too fun for Canadian fans. I hope I'm wrong, but I do see 2-2, which in the end isn't a terrible result for Canada, right? Like they get two away goals. They head back to Chicago, Canada, I guess. And they look to just get a draw in that game below 2-2. So I do think Canada is going to get a couple away goals, but it's not going to be a win for the Canadians.
Interesting. And I mean, I think I went 2-2 as well on the show. So we're on similar wavelengths there. And I just wanted to answer Sam's question earlier. I think this could be a perfect environment for Milan Borjan. I think of some of the stadiums he has to play in Serbia. I see a lot of similarities there. Some of the sketchy away games you get in Serbia, and there's no fans, so he doesn't have to deal with people throwing stuff at him. Maybe this is the kind of environment that Milan Borjan thrives in. He's I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. So I want to answer Sam's earlier question.
And for the viewers out there, Alex, you predicted a 2-2 for this match, and then what was your prediction for the second leg and the overall score?
A 3-0.
So 5-2, 5-2 right? On aggregate.
Yeah, for Canada. I'm not gonna dare entertain that thought right now.
Yeah, and so going back to my predictions. So if you listen to our latest podcast, you know this already, I guess. But I predicted also a draw for this fixture, 1-1. I think just pitch conditions, a little cagier. Maybe I'm favoring less goals overall, but then a relatively confident 2-0 win for Canada in Chicago. So very much same format, same vibes, but I think we're all expecting this one to be challenging for both teams. But Canada does have those nuclear weapons in David and Davies, so you never know when they're going to go off. Right? Could easily break open and be a 3 or 4-0. if they make the most of it. And there we go. We see the breakdown. I mean, as much as the focus has been largely on Alphonso Davies, you look at Jonathan David, and he's got more goals than he has caps, which is, usually a pretty good sign, right? And that it's an impressive record to look at. And Davies, I think, all the way back to, matches in the last international window. And yes, he even at a very young age had the ability to affect games, but now he has the ability to raise the whole level of the squad. And he's learned that in Germany. He's learned that at Bayern Munich. And he's taken so much of what he's learned and kind of how he's grown as a player and brought it into this national team. So even if the goal score line, isn't quite as flattering as it is for David, I think his effect is even greater.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think those two players, they can take over games, right? If you're making an all CONCACAF team and you have the US and Mexico in it, I would probably put Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies still in that all CONCACAF team. They're that good. Sure, the rest of the Canadian lineup isn't up to that level. Like Steven Eustáquio, very good player, but he's not up to sort of world-class level. But those two can take over a game. And Alex, I do like your prediction of a bit of a heftier win in the second leg.
I think Canada's way of playing lends itself to home on grass in U.S. and Canadian stadiums. So I have to see that happening. But I guess we'll find out. But on that note, that was the Third Sub live show presented by our good friends at Macy Sports. Just wanted to give them a shout out here. They're partnering with us for a fantastic boots giveaway. So head over to Instagram, head over to Twitter to enter in that if you're in the Vancouver area. Very easy to enter. The boots are just sublime with it being footy season. For example, me, I got some holes in my boots now. So if I were in a similar situation, I would enter the competition as well. So if you're in a similar situation to me, make sure to enter. It's a limited edition of Adidas boots, X-Men style, so that they're stylish as well, not only just comfortable and good for scoring goals, but they're very nice as well. But just shout out to Macy Sports for that. But that was today's live show for Canada versus Haiti. If you enjoyed, make sure to stay tuned for the next one. And if you're between the two games, if you haven't checked out episode 100 yet, make sure to do so. It's relevant for both games. We had some fantastic conversations about Canadian men's national team soccer. But thanks to everyone who tuned in. Thanks to Ben Sam. And special shout out to producer Ben for always holding down the fort and, being the center backs to our strikers sometimes. He does a lot of the dirty work that goes unnoticed. So shout out to that. And we'll catch you guys next time.
What's up, bro?
There's not a rule that you have to use the two subs.
He's the best left back.
Jamaica, ooh, I wanna take you to Bermuda, Bahama, come on, pretty mama. 1,000 to 1, now the odds they're giving us. A lot of them are in for a surprise. We've got a mighty team that no one else has seen. The stars of Canada are on the rise. But who can lay down odds on the hearts of 11 men? Oh Canada, our hearts are ringing true. We've won for you before and we'll win for you again. Oh Canada, we'll proudly play for you. Dale Mitchell has touches like no one else has got. In Mexico we'll show them how to play. And striker George Pecos has a rifle for a shot. And Tino Lantieri saves the day.